Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Collectors with Cards Drinking Coffee. I'm your host, PokemonRadar. Today we have a new type of guest, someone that is fairly new to Pokemon himself. I recently started chatting with him through E4 Discord and have seen his name around on E4 since he's been kind of making a couple waves here with the type of things he's buying. So. Very interested to get to know him and a little bit better and talk with him. But today we have our very own BugCatcherDave. How you doing?
Okay. Good, sir. How you doing?
Good, good. Nice to meet you finally in person. We've played some Among Us together, and
Yeah,
I've offered you some of my cards at crazy prices that you've kindly declined. So, um,
it goes both ways. It goes both ways, whether it be offering, and also selling, of course. So
mhm.
we'll get into that, but yeah, there's definitely some deals to be had out there, but there's also some of these cards with their scarcity. If you pass up a deal, like in this case, what we talked about with your deal,
Mhm.
it'll be a long time before I see another. So I very well may regret that.
Well, let's get started to get to know you a little bit better. So when did you dive into Pokemon here? I mean, it's got to be what, less than a year, right?
So it's so crazy. I have a Magic the Gathering background, and I used to play the modern format a lot. And I used to collect a lot of the vintage, which a lot of it can still be seen on my Instagram page at the very bottom. I put it all down there. Uh, but I got into Pokemon mostly because it appeals to me more. Magic is it's fun to play. Uh, it's a little bit more nostalgic, but Pokemon has both the nostalgia and the investment form for me. I think Magic itself has hit a lot of its peak. When we go back and look at who collected Magic, Magic came out in 1993 with the Alpha set, Alpha into Beta into Unlimited, and a lot of those people that collected in 1993 have now already reached their maximum or close to their maximum income. Thus, the people that are interested in buying those cards, a lot of those cards I feel have already reached what kind of their maximum is going to be. I don't think we're going to see an Alpha Black Lotus again double in price. Whereas, as we all know, between the last 4, 5, 6 months, Charizard's done a lot of doubling. I talk about majority of the cards I talk about are first edition PSA 10, that sort of thing. That's the market that I'm mostly familiar with. So I started to, kind of think to myself, I'm like, okay, like Magic, in my opinion, is becoming a little bit stale, a little bit, um, it's like losing its edge.
Hmm.
And I ended up, for some business reasons and stuff, I ended up selling a lot of my modern cards uh, in 2018 GP Vegas. So I flew down there, just in and out real quick. I was down there, like an hour and a half, sold all my modern, got out of there, and but still have all my vintage. So the vintage stuff to me is nostalgic. I don't keep it for that reason. Of course, there's some value there, but I wanted to then look for something else that I felt like had both investability and nostalgia. So although Magic came first to me, Pokemon was I've been looking at it, and I've actually been looking at it for years. But years ago, it wasn't moving. You'd have a lot of the first edition base set and PSA 10. They'd they'd be within a few $100s of each other. Most of the year.
Hmm.
Or, from one sale to another, wouldn't be that different. So I'm like, well, I can't sink in this much money right now. Uh, I'm a little bit younger, got some other like life priorities, whether house, family, that sort of stuff that needs taken care of. I'm not super interested from the investable standpoint of something that's not moving or not moving yet. Of course, looking back on it, do I wish that I picked up a Charizard at 20 grand? Yeah, kind of. I think we all do, but no one could have known.
Well,
Um,
it's funny you mentioned that because first edition base specifically, if you were into Pokemon, I'm kind of just like estimating what point you started looking at it, but if you were into Pokemon before, like slightly before that, or really like engaged during that time, we knew that first edition base was just lagging behind. It hadn't moved in so long. Everything else was moving, but because of your insight on investing and what you were looking at, that was all you were looking at. You weren't looking at the entire market. You were looking at first edition base. So you weren't able to, I'm guessing, notice that lull in the market that was pretty obvious to most people that have been in Pokemon for a while. So that's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, what I will say is that when I say I've been looking at it for a long time, it's a very macro overview, just kind of eBay sold here and there, maybe PokemonPrice.com, as far as is following the little graph on some sales. Except, we can't use that one 100% with some of the maybe inaccuracies or maybe lag. Sometimes there's lag between a sale and when it gets posted, stuff like that. So, where was I going with that? So I've been looking at it for a long time, but it wasn't an in-depth. And then finally what happened, and this is what started my whole, I guess, Pokemon career or Pokemon, investing standpoint, was that back in April, we had one of the last snowfalls here of the year. And I'm working all the time. I don't want to shovel. So I want I asked the kid, the kid next door, him and his two friends or something. They were out of school, and I was like, hey, you guys want to shovel? So they're like, sure. And they find it fun. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to break my back. You guys find it fun. I'll compensate you after. Just help me out a little bit. So they did, so I have a camera out on the driveway that does both video and audio, and all they were talking about while they were shoveling was Pokemon. And I was like, and they're like 8 to 10.
Okay.
And I'm like, and that's when it clicked for me. I'm like, wow, kids still, this is what they talk about and think about. They're not talking about Fortnite. They're not talking about, video games, at least this group, and at this time frame. They were talking about trading in Pokemon. And the one that was my neighbor who I ended up actually compensating, he was talking about Ekans and that he really wanted an Arbok. And I'm like, all right, I remember when I was a kid and my parents didn't give an F, and they maybe get me a pack here and there, maybe not. But if someone could get me the card that I really wanted, that'd be so cool. So I hopped on eBay, looked for a Dark Arbok, first edition, played out of Team Rocket. At the time, it was like $8 in light play condition. I ordered it off eBay. But I'm like, you know what? That's not enough. I mean, they helped. They did a lot. So I'm like, okay, well, everybody loves Charizard. Let's look at Charizard. So a base Charizard, even in light play, I think was maybe like 50. It was a little bit. So I'm like, okay. So I went to an XY Evolutions Charizard. Got a light play, $20. Got it in, and of course with the envelope with a few dollars, gave it to his mom and the kid, but then that's what got me looking. So those kids that inspired me to think back to my own childhood, but also reminded me that this still is a big thing for that age group. And so what's really cool about it is what gets to me is that those kids have probably, say they're 10, they probably have 13 to 15 years before they actually come into their careers, if they do, and get disposable income. Just like me, they're going to think back to their childhood and what did they enjoy. And I didn't know at the time, but it appears that they still enjoy Pokemon. And I think now that I've gotten into it with all the modern and how fast the modern sells, and Instagram, I follow a few Instagram accounts, and they go to Target and everyone's trying to buy out all the stuff, Target or Walmart. I mean, stuff's flying off the shelf. It's still popular, even the modern. So that's what got me looking into it. But heavily. So that's when I found E4 and found Scott, and I joined his Patreon, and I started watching all his YouTube videos among some other people in their YouTube videos, a little bit with PokeRadar, kind of like pack openings,
right.
Kind of to understand that a little bit, but mostly the like investable money market side of the type of videos. And I
Hmm.
started really trying to educate myself on what this market was like and how it's so much different and more fluid and larger, in my opinion, than what Magic is.
Yeah, and like I mean, like you said, kids are still doing it today. Everyone knows at this point that Pokemon's the largest media franchise of all time, and like I get asked all the time, especially by like my dad and his friends, like what's next, and I'm like, Pokemon's next, even though it's happening now and it's still crazy. Like they keep telling me like, what's next? What's next? It's Pokemon. Like that's my answer. Like there's nothing else that you can pick because it's yeah. Like I mean, kids today aren't getting their cards because all those older guys are taking it all off the shelf. So, we had our experience of not having a Charizard back then. They're now having that same experience where they're not getting Hidden Fates. So, in 15 years, when they have a job and they look back at it, they'll be like, oh, I remember Hidden Fates. It was super hype back then. I couldn't find any. Let's get some. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's going to be a same cycle. And I mean, sure, I don't actually know, but it's, in my mind, it seems pretty obvious.
Same cycle in the sense that too, it's that right now the kids that are at the Hidden Fates, the Vivid Voltage line, well, there's kids that are 5 years older
Hmm.
that wanted sets 5 years earlier, but it's a whole string. So every year that goes by, a whole new crop of youngsters come, finish college, come into their career. Maybe they're out in California and they hit some tech boom,
Hmm.
and a year earlier they had had nothing, and then all of a sudden they get into a $200,000 a year job and have some disposable income.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it with sports cards. We saw it with a whole bunch of other collectibles. It's happening with us now with Pokemon. So why wouldn't it continue to happen like into the future generations? So, well,
Correct.
how old are you?
So I have now turned 33. I believe my Instagram account says 32, so I got
Okay.
to change that.
All right. Well,
But
happy birthday.
yeah, well, it was July. It was July. Wow, I had to update that. But yeah, so I'm now 33. Yep, and in Denver, Colorado. So I don't. There's a few people that I follow that are local, but otherwise, I think most everybody's pretty well spread out. I don't think there's anyone that I know that's doing this sort of Pokemon thing in my area.
Right, especially at your level. I mean, I know that the hot spots are like New York, Southern LA or Southern California, LA, Houston or Dallas area, and then a lot of the big players like SM Pratt and Charlie and these guys kind of they're just spread throughout the Midwest and whatnot, living cheaply like you should and
Well, I
can
mean,
with
mom's basement, right? So
right.
that
So, yeah, I wanted to touch, go back to that magic discussion from before, where, for the longest time when I got into the hobby in like 2015, 16, there was like a very, very close correlation to Magic because Magic was the big brother. We were paying attention to what was happening there. Pokemon was following suit. And then, yeah, we started to notice this flat line in Magic. And it actually scared some of us with Pokemon because we were just following it so closely. But then quickly it came to the realization that Pokemon's so much broader, hit so many more people that it just blew right past them and continued the up curve, and is still going super strong. Um, but for that age range point, like you mentioned, yeah, Magic is 6 years English wise, 6 years older than Pokemon. So those guys have hit kind of their peak income. But I still think that there's this spike that happens even above that for like the retirees, basically. They get stuck at home, they cash out of whatever business they were running or their investments that they had when they were working, and now they're sitting at home and want to get back into collecting again. So yeah, I think you're right in where Magic's gonna flatline for a while, but I still see like a down the road future of another spike for Magic.
I completely agree, and I think it's probably that way for most collectibles.
Hmm.
What I think it will be a big difference in why I personally don't think it'll, even after this flatline, hike up too much more, is just purely the market size.
Mhm.
So Pokemon has so many more individuals interested, whereas Magic, I mean, I guess it's really hard to, but it has nothing promotes it. In fact, a lot of whether it be schools or parents, they demote it. I mean,
Mhm.
Magic's a very dark, kind of a grim type of artwork generally, with a lot of destruction, and generally that's not promoted within society. Whereas a lot of Pokemon cards, well, they're cute, they're fun, they promote like happiness, all the video games, everybody's happy,
Mhm.
all the even in battles and all sorts of things. So it, as a cultural standpoint, I think it's going to be they start on the same level as both card games and collectible card games, but I think Magic really diverts nichely,
Mhm.
whereas Pokemon still resonates with all people, like at all levels. And so you take that in combination with all the media stuff, whether it be new games, video games with the Pokemon Snap coming out, new version, or we have other events that really promote the game. Now, one thing that I will say is hugely different, and that kind of leads me to where my investing went, was that Magic and Pokemon, the one huge difference is promos.
Mhm.
Magic, they may have come out with some promos, but nothing in that high tier portion of Magic is a promo. It's all a set card. So although the sets are small relatively, it's still a set card that doesn't have any like history behind it other than the set. Whereas a lot of these promos, whether it be like, the play promos that have been, recently hot, or Masaki, that sort of thing, they all have their own very unique story.
Mhm.
Where Magic the Gathering Alpha, I mean, just the same story it is for every single card.
Right. Which alpha and beta, well, mostly alpha, has a really solid historic, unique story on its own, being 1100 print run, uh, and that in itself is going to hold the test of time. I think, but yeah, they definitely don't have unique releases, unique artwork for certain cards that like Pokemon does, because Pokemon caters specifically to the kids, to their game, but they've done a really good job too on the collector side of things, mostly in Japan for the longest time, of providing unique promos, trophy event cards, all that stuff. We're finally starting to get a little bit more in English here, so I'm curious to see if that ever starts to pick up again, because like you mentioned, the play promo cards, in Japan they have and always had these fan clubs basically, where the more their players and fans get involved, they can get these cards, and some of them are extremely rare. Um, like this is the play promo Umbreon, one that I recently bought and flipped, for a hefty sum, $40,000 actually. I sold it for in a Beckett 9. I know that was one you were looking for,
Yep.
and I mean, I think I might have hurt you on that side of things now that that sale happened.
Well, and that's just the way it go. It goes with all of them, and that's the name of the game, of
Right.
course. And of course, that's the one we were referring to early on.
Mm-hmm.
Is I did know it was up for sale. So it's always sucks when you're like, gosh, like I didn't even know that card was for sale. If I knew, only if I knew, you know. But I did know, and I made made a conscious decision,
Mm-hmm.
on that I was wanting to go after that copy or not. And so, um, yes, it does set a new bar, of course, so that makes a PSA 10 now not 40,000,
Mm-hmm.
some greater than that. So, but that's just all how it goes, and of course, we all want each other to thrive in this. If someone's going down and they have to liquidate everything, well, that's generally not a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
for collectors. Now, other people may get in and may get the card they want, but for the hobby to stay really healthy, we want all of us to keep buying, and keep adding to our collections. That makes the cards that much more scarcer, and that makes the price go up. So What I'm happy about, though, is that you got it out of raw form and graded.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that makes it a lot easier. And that's, again, another big difference between Magic and Pokemon is Pokemon ends up a lot more of a commodity because you have a grade on it. A Charizard PSA 9 first edition. Now, is there strong versions? Is there weak versions? Of course. But as far as like a price goes, you can throw 40 grand, 35 grand, kind of wherever it's at right now on a PSA 9 Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
First edition base. I feel like I always have to clarify because there's someone, that's going to. So, yeah, if nothing else, that copy specifically at that time wasn't for me, but for it to be graded, and receive a grade, and now we know that a 9 Beckett, this is where we're at with that. It is helpful for the market as a whole. Mm-hmm. So, it is a card that I'm after. I'll go readily out and say it. That and the Fan Club Magikarp. Those are the two that I'm after, and really the only two cards I'm looking for right now. Both 5 figures, mid 5 figures on some of those mm-hmm. copies. So we'll see. I don't think a Magikarp itself is sold here publicly in a little while. I know there's one on IG floating around that I know who picked it up at 23. So that's the last sale I know for that.
The Fan Club Shining or the Unicarp? The
Fan Club Shining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fan Club, not the Unicarp. Whether it gets to Unicarp or Tropical Wind, I mean, they're all, the 1999 Tropical Wind. They're not holographic, so from a purely nostalgic point of view, it's kind of like,
yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I feel the same exact way. People, I love the Tropical Wind because of its unique history. And I'm okay. Yep. Like I've come to terms with that one not being holographic, and I like the fact that they can like switch up the artwork every Worlds or whatever since they've released it. But right. The Unicarp, I don't understand. I don't like that card.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's it's the first of its artwork, and that the artwork was also used again, in a subsequent web promo mm-hmm. or that where the artwork was used again, but. Yeah, specifically, is it a great card to have? Yeah, but in my opinion, it's only a great card to have because other people think it's a great card to have.
Yeah, that's
a great card to have. So, anyway, so back to just the two cards. Those are the two cards I'm after.
Okay,
and they're both, holographic in a sense there, and. When it comes to me, though, in what I try and collect, it's both the promos section, but also, like, I'm not looking for, and this is why I made a mistake early on, and I even spoke to Scott about it early on, and he pointed me in the right direction, and I took his advice too late. But, because I went all set. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm going to start, and the very first thing, so this is my very first purchase ever, in Pokemon, May 11th, from Trainer Nate. I believe a lot of us know him here in the community. He's down in Hawaii. He had his full Team Rocket PSA 10 set for sale. And I'd been looking at it, not only that set, but also some other cards. But when I do something, I like really go all in. Like I wouldn't have been able to enter Pokemon and been able to like buy 3 cards and call it good. Like when I do something, unfortunately, those around me, my family and all that, they know that like if this starts, like it's gonna start. So
an obsession.
So I felt like that Trainer Nate and I came up with a price that was agreeable to him, and it worked for me also. And I'm like, all right, here we go. And so May 11th, we went and bought the full Team Rocket set, first edition PSA 10. And then from there, I just started looking. But what Scott told me when I became his Patreon was that, if you're in it for the nostalgia, you can go for the set stuff, the English set stuff that you remember as a kid. Sure, go for it. Most collectors do. They start with set, and then they sort of branch out. Mm-hmm. But he told me if you're in it from a purely investable standpoint, it's going to be the Japanese unique art, promos, top grades, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And he told me that early.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, like that's cool, but like, I don't even know what any of these cards say. Like, I know nothing about them.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm still even learning. Like, so my era is all WotC.
Mm-hmm.
Being 33 now, everything is base through. I personally stopped at Neo.
Okay.
Had transferred, back to Magic in my daily life, kind of when Neo came out. So I don't have too much connection to Neo for investable standpoints. I do have a Neo Lugia that I feel like is a good card from that set. But nostalgia-wise, those don't mean too much to me. So that's where I stopped with sets. But a lot of those set cards, kind of the mid-range holos and a lot of those earlier WotC sets, they haven't moved too much.
Mm-hmm.
If it was $500 back in May, maybe it's $800 now. Now, I guess from a percentage point of view, that is a large move, but that's not a move like a lot of these other cards have done, in terms of percent. But what's really interesting is when you get a big mover, and of course Charizard's the example, a large dollar figure and a large percent move.
Right.
Take Charizard, probably at that time was about 40-ish,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of back in May. Well, you turn 40 into 300. Well, 40 itself, 40 grand is a ton of money. And then you also, have it move up, like 7, 8x?
Mm-hmm.
Course of, so a ton of money plus, a 7 to 8x move is much more interesting. Now, to me, that's probably one of the only outliers. I think maybe Chansey, Blastoise, some of those other base first editions are kind of like pseudo trophy cards in a way, and they've all moved quite a bit. I don't think Poliwrath is 30 grand, but I believe one did sell for 30 grand, and at the time was probably about 1,200, 1,500, back in May.
Right.
Maybe 1,800. Some small number though under 2 grand. For the go from that's even a much larger percent. That's almost a 20x.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, and like Scott said, there's this comfortability in buying set cards because it's what it's what you're used to.
In my case, it's what you can read.
Yeah. That's a big thing too. And everyone does that. And I've done consulting on a much smaller scale than Scott, but to some very, very high net worth individuals, and I've told them the same thing, and they gave that same exact response. I can't read it. I don't know what these things are. I don't want them. When I put a trophy Pikachu in their face, when I put a trophy Kangaskhan in their face, I told them everything about it, and they still hesitated and backed away from it because they weren't comfortable with it. And it is intimidating when you throw that at somebody who's just getting into Pokemon, 6-figure card, 5-figure card that is written in all Japanese. Like, yeah, that's very intimidating. But, thankfully you picked up on that pretty quick after, talking to Scott.
Took a bunch of different price changes. But yeah, I feel like I've gotten in there. Now, do I have either of those two cards that you just mentioned? No. Like, I don't have, any of the top end Kangaskhan's or Rings or, of course, an Illustrator, I'm not at that level. But yeah, I've tried to pick up what I felt were some good, I would consider, maybe other people don't, but just like mid-level promos, along the way that have, done pretty well. And so I would say the very first type of promos that I got into were Masaki, and between some E4 posts plus Scott's video about the cards, I really think, and of course still do think, that the cards are due for, their due. The only thing I feel like that's holding them back is the availability of Raw.
Yeah.
So even though PSA 10, you take a PSA 10 Machamp, which is approximately a pop of about 26, I believe. That's in the same realm as an Umbreon, a promo play Umbreon, but its price isn't nearly the same.
Right. Well, it's much more widely available. The way to get the card was much easier. So that's a lot of, deeper knowledge of understanding of the card. Like, yeah, it's insanely hard to get a 10. You look at the Play Promo Umbreon, 90%, 95% of what was graded is a 10. So if you compare those, couple attributes with it, yeah, you could say that Machamp should be just as valuable, if not more. But you need to look at everything from a whole and understand that, because the true availability of like an Umbreon Espeon, I sold, that was the first public, technically public, I guess. It was more so private sale of a Play Promo Umbreon in like 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And although, a ton of Machamps and other Masaki promos you can still buy to this day pretty consistently, I mean, you're not getting 10s because of just the way they were given out and the condition that they're in now. So, yeah, there's you got to be careful when you're looking at those. If you're looking specifically at the pop report, you need to compare all those different aspects of the card. So, definitely great cards. I love the Masaki promos. I don't have any myself, but
I agree. I think very good, and I think that in time, I think we'll see a lot of the raw kind of get eaten up.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they'll get their 6 to 8s, with their marks. The raw grades. But yeah, if you compare it to the sets that you were just talking about, there's no raws of those cards. Any Espeon raws or Umbreon raws. I mean, if you can even find one, I mean, it'll get graded right away. And generally, it will get a high grade. Generally, if it's still in its wrapper and wasn't thrown around, and all that sort of thing. But right now, if somebody were to want Masaki, you can just jump on eBay. You can pick up any of the cards raw for a few $100, maybe Gengar, maybe raw. I don't know if it's over 1,000 now or not.
They're getting there, yeah.
But for a lot of people that are just wanting the card, not everybody needs 10s.
Right.
That's the only way I really like to go. But not everybody has to operate that way. And there's plenty and plenty of people that are either fine with raw and or binder copies, or just they're an 8-9 collector, and that's totally fine. So the availability of that card is still wide. All of the cards in that set are still quite available, just not in that specific grade. Whereas a lot of these other cards that are either higher end promos or even the top tier promos, they're not available in any grade.
Right, and that's where each individual has to go in with their mindset. I mean, clearly you've gone in heavily on the investment side, so PSA 10 is the answer. That's the way you want to go if you want to maximize and protect yourself basically on your investments. That's the safest way to go about it. Sure, there's a higher value attached to it, so it seems like a higher risk, but in reality, it'll be a lower risk. Ups and downs won't be as dramatic as 8 and 9s, percentage wise. So yeah, like for me, I'm a collector, but I can't afford to collect 10s, 9s. Like I collect binder sets and then I sell 9s and 10s. So that's just like, it's all about each individual situation. And I mean, you're very focused on what you're doing, obviously, and very smart about it. I mean, you've got to be pretty successful, even before Pokemon here, buying the cards that you're buying. I mean, you want to talk a little bit about how you got to this point? Like, what do you do?
I mean, it's really not like a whole ton. I mean, there's no like super crazy story. I graduated CU with a degree in both economics and business, and then went to DU. I mean, maybe you guys can see right there. There's the diplomas. Went to DU, Denver University, for an MBA. Got an MBA in accounting. But during that time, I was like, for an MBA, you got to take lots of different courses because it's a big overarching type of degree. And there's an entrepreneurial course, and the course was focused on, like starting a business and what you can do around that. So I started that, and I'm trying to think of how it like really initially started. But right now, essentially what I do is all based around rare American coins. So whether it be wheat pennies that maybe some of us remember, I mean, you won't really find them out and change anymore. But I think everyone pretty much knows what that is, all the way up through like Morgan silver dollars. And what I think helped me get a foot in the door here is coins is a lot similar to cards, where there's a pop report, and I've been doing that for now 10 years, going really hard and heavy. But I think that's where you can kind of start to make a connection that allows some of this investing in cards in general just to move a little more smoothly. Is coins and cards are share a lot of similar characteristics, and there's grading companies for both. There's grades and partial grades and authentic grades versus an actual numerical grade, all sorts of that stuff. So if you come from like a completely other background, then I could see where it could take someone like a little while longer to like understand, like, wait, like, why do I want to buy a card that I can't even touch? Like, it's in this plastic and you can't even like get to it. And like, if you look at it at this angle, the glare of the plastic, you still can't even see it, that sort of thing. So because I've got that in my own, with my own work when I sell, because generally my market is older gentlemen, say 45 to 85. It's generally what collects. But coins aren't going to last, and I firmly believe that they're a thing of the older generation, and a lot of those people are, they kind of either get to the end and they either die or they, kind of stop collecting, and that sort of thing. Once you get to a certain age, like for example, my grandpa's out here staying with my parents, and he's going to have his 90th birthday here soon. Well, unfortunately, he's no longer able to appreciate that kind of stuff. He's just mainly focused on, getting through the day and that sort of stuff. So that market, in my opinion, is dying, but the new entrants into that market, there aren't many.
Right.
If we, like with the earlier example with the kids shoveling my snow, and talking about Pokemon, well, there's no one doing anything talking about coins.
Stamps are dead. Paper money's pretty much dead.
So I personally never got into either, especially stamps. I think that's just one of those. I mean, of course, there's some rare ones from super early.
Right, and those will always stick around. Same with Pokemon, same with sports, same with whatever. The top of the top will kind of always stick around. But
I think it will be there, but I think just with history, it'll start to dwindle.
Yeah.
Like I think, I mean, some of them can of course prove me wrong, but I think stamps is virtually like a very niche thing now.
Oh yeah.
Like the whole, maybe the 10 stamp collectors out there that are really big into it, they all know each other and they have their coffee and they kind of trade their stamps. But it's not like, so explosive that you're having these huge auctions and stuff. Now, maybe I'm completely wrong.
I think I saw a recent article of like a new record, but it's basically the Mona Lisa of stamps. So like I said, for any collectible, that top 0.1%, of the collection will continue to stay afloat, just because it's got that historic piece, the Honus Wagner or whatever. So, but yeah, 95% of it is dead.
Yeah, it's and this is from a very uneducated standpoint on that exact hobby. I know nothing about stamps, other than that sometimes coin collectors and stamp collectors, sometimes they merge, or sometimes the hobby like conventions will have both.
Yeah.
When I would attend the conventions, there would be dealers with both, and so you get a little bit exposed to it. But otherwise, yeah, mainly it's rare American coins. Earliest date is generally the 1860s, about maybe 1859, right there with the earliest Flying Eagle penny, and then all the way up through. I don't do much past 1963,
right.
Which 1963, 1964, kind of right in there, which would then been the end of what would be the 90% silver.
Right.
Like dimes, quarters, all that stuff ended their 90% silver composition in 1964.
What, 63 on the quarter, 64 on the dimes, I think.
So they're both 64.
Oh, both 64. Okay.
Yep. So much past that, you get into clad, and then now you're not really at a collectible value anymore.
Just
you're
looking for errors and
errors and that sort of stuff, and that's totally fine. There's people that like big bags of coins, and they go through that stuff and they look for that kind of stuff. But as the dealer niche that I'm on, it's not. I don't have time to do that sort of thing.
So has that been your main business then these past 10 years?
Yeah, so 10 years been in the coin and bullion industry, doing just business all around the country. A lot of rare coins, usually PCGS, NGC graded. So those would then correlate to Beckett or PSA kind of thing.
So you've been very successful with that, obviously, and used to
worked out well.
Yeah, and you know, same kind of industry, or used to having large sums of money readily available to spend. So like when you first got in, you buy a full PSA 10 Team Rocket set, and then you know, thankfully, not many people do this. You know, Scott's the right person to go after. You know, you recognize that quick. You're paying him for his time, for his information, which is still undervalued on his Patreon for anybody that wants to join. I mean, there's obviously things you need to be careful about with anybody, whether it's SM Pratt or it's Gary V, whoever you're listening to. You got to really do your research still on your own.
It's definitely, you can't, excuse me, you can't, nothing is complete face value.
Right.
You know, most educated investor will take little bits here, little bits there, plus whatever they kind of find on their own and kind of merge it, you know. So it's not because any one person necessarily will give bad advice. Of course, they just generally they give advice that either worked for them at that time or that works for their financial and home situation, all that sort of thing. But everybody has, a different cash flow, a different, fixed expense type of, report and all that they have to deal with every month. And so certain recommendations don't always work for certain people.
Like the Unicart, for example. Scott loves that card. He pushes it a lot. I mean, he has a great story with one where he found one in a bulk buy from Japan. So he has this great nostalgic attachment to it, not, from a collecting standpoint. So he loves that card. But, even though he talks about it a lot and it's something that you've recognized personally, that's not for you. So, yeah, that's just one perfect example.
Would I love to own one? Of course. But it's down the tier list, of cards in that, kind of financial range that I'd like to own.
Right.
So, because yes, personally, it does nothing for me. And yeah, I mean, the only reason to own it, is because someday somebody else wants to own it.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing with this as well, because again, the comfort of set cards, it's such a wide range of much a larger buyer pool. So if you need to resell it, it's much easier to find that buyer. Although being competitive on the market, you're not going to get the same type of deals as you would with these niche trophy cards, which it's still weird saying that they're niche, but they are. I mean, the market, although it's grown and the numbers are growing with it, it's never going to be a quick sell. I mean, sure, my Umbreon was quick, but a lot of the other stuff I've bought, I mean, I've gotten to the point where I just don't want to take these numbers that people are throwing around. I want more, so it's a slower sell, and yeah, it's tough to find the right buyer for this stuff.
It's tough to find the right buyer, absolutely, and especially when you get into some of these higher numbers. Like, I'm not sure how you did your Umbreon sale. I'm thinking about, if I were in that position, how would I do it? I don't know if you just, you took a payment and shipped it. I've not shipped a $40,000 card before, and what I would do, I don't. It didn't.
Yeah, I mean, so my first huge sale was directly through eBay. $27,000 for a PSA 7 Kangaskhan, Trophy Kangaskhan. Shipped it FedEx next day, arrived safely. The guy messaged me on Instagram afterwards on an eBay, said it was fine. That was stressful, very, very stressful. I can't insure for that much. My past issues with eBay on buyers trying to scam me out of a $100 pack because they didn't pull a Charizard, that was very stressful. But thankfully, it all went fine. It went good. But for that Umbreon specifically, thankfully, I have a pretty solid network and outreach with my brand. So when I made it available for sale, there was many people reaching out for it, and it worked out perfect. I've been listening to Scott a lot more recently about how he deals with that and asking him kind of off to the side what he does, because I haven't really handled that many either, these huge deals. So, he talks about signing contracts and doing all these legal things.
That's Just to make a purchase?
Yeah, just to make a purchase, doing whether it's a 1 page contract or a 7 page contract,
Oh,
and doing it in that certain way, do a little DocuSign or whatever. Um, so with this Umbreon, it was actually made really simple. Where a guy reached out to me on Instagram. I did my checks with my inner circle of people to see what he was like, see if it was okay to deal with him. Um, again, having the brand that I have, I'm very trusted in the community. So the only way I was going to do it was a bank wire, which to anyone who's buying something, or, that's a risky move because I could have walked away with it and never gave him the card.
correct.
Um, and then even on top of that, to make it even better, he was international, but has an account with PWCC. So PWCC has their vault, which they'll hold on the stuff for you at
Okay.
very low cost. Shipping internationally, there's a huge import export fee that people have to pay. And of course, shipping an item of that value, you got to declare the full value, got to protect yourself. Don't ever ship anything out like
As
that.
the shipper, yes.
Yeah, you don't want any
Right.
of that responsibility. I don't even if it is in writing, and I know in writing, it would just still bring up some sort of court case probably that you don't want to deal with. um, Even though if you do get into writing, you'll be fine. But I contacted PWCC, said, "Hey, got a customer who bought this and this at this value. Could you send me a label with insured up to this value?" And
Sure.
PWCC is able to do that. They have a special account with FedEx or whoever, so they can insure their packages up to like a ridiculous amount. So that's like honestly the perfect situation for any of these
So you
cards.
sent it.
Yeah, I sent it to PWCC Vault under his name. They sent me the label. I paid for it, and it was perfect. Like super clean deal. Nothing went wrong.
So at this time, is it sitting with his vault, or do you know if he wants to then pull it out and bring it
So
home?
his plans are to travel to the States as soon as lockdown stuff kind of cools off, hopefully again soon, and pick it up.
Pick it up in person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay. So that I think that's that's a great way to do it, and I think it's a very unique way to do it. I think that
Hmm.
virtually most transactions probably can't have that type of outcome.
Right. It was. Yeah.
I don't have, PWCC. I guess I have an account. I don't have anything vaulted.
Hmm.
So I'd have to look into that.
Yeah. They do charge a percentage fee or something per year, per month. I haven't done it myself either, but um, fantastic route to go about it with high value transactions.
Sounds like it's a fantastic route for both high value and also international.
Yeah.
So, well, I'll keep that in mind when it, hopefully not anytime soon, but when it does, come time to sell
Yeah.
some, some of the 5-figure cards that get a little, wary. In my own business, I ship all that kind of stuff all the time, but it's to, again, trusted people that I already know that I've done business with for years,
Hmm.
as opposed to, I don't, just a person that contacts you on Instagram.
Right.
You hope that it was not their mom's credit card, and just like all that.
Hmm. Well,
Sort of.
I've had that issue. I sold a heavy first edition base set pack for $5,000 back in January or something. The guy claimed that it wasn't heavy because he switched out the packs or something on the scale. Um, Thankfully, I was prepared for it. I did a bunch of stuff beforehand to protect myself, and I talked.
I mean, what can you do? Like, because when you say it's a heavy, you're not guaranteeing a hollow, because that's not guaranteed.
Right.
So when you sell the pack, you just sell it with the weight and say, here's a 21.2.
Well, on my end, it involved the high cost where, we bought heavy packs. Well, I bought a whole lot of packs with Swellpoke. We weighed them out. Uh, we took the heavies aside. We actually each opened one to prove out, if there were they had hollows. That's something
Sure.
that I do personally that a lot of people don't do is when they buy product, they don't open it to check. I mean, there's some really good reseals out there. So I always
Yeah.
open one thing, maybe even two, to check the packs to make
Sure.
sure it's legit. So
Mhm.
that was the first step. So I took that hit basically. I could have pulled a Charizard, but I think I pulled a Ninetales. Um, So I lost value there, but I did the check to make sure things were legitimate, documented that whole thing, and then before shipping out, documented the entire packaging process. I literally filmed myself going through the packaging process, pack on the scale, taping it, timestamp, label, all the way to the post office, dropping it off. Zero funny business possible. And that's where the guy screwed up trying to scam me. He claimed there was a different weight. And yes, the weights can vary based on moisture in the air or elevation or it's the scale you're using, but not by the significant amount that he showed. But yeah, still, even if it did weigh that much and he opened it, Watsy could have screwed up and put an extra non-hollow in there. You know, we don't know. You don't know. So there's never a 100% guarantee. Although I had a pretty solid case that there was a hollow, and then I don't know what that guy did with the pack.
So was it claimed through eBay?
It was direct through PayPal. So,
okay. And PayPal did get it closed, and PayPal sided with you.
Yeah, he opened up a case. I shared the video privately with PayPal, told him the whole story about it, showed him my history with eBay. I have a perfect track record with eBay. Show him my Instagram. I'm a Pokemon account. This is what I do. I'm an expert. So, yeah, I don't know which thing tipped the scale in my favor. I'm sure it was a collaboration of all, but yeah, so it worked out. I wish I sent him a life hack because he tried to scam me, but obviously, you know, things were done correctly. That guy can go to hell. So,
well, yeah, I mean, we've all encountered, but yeah, we've all encountered our own, when it comes to online sales, there's nothing that's going to be foolproof.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do, you do take the W at the end, it's still a lot of time and stress.
Yeah.
With it. And, I would say that's probably one of the most difficult things. I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you just get to like work from home and work in whatever, clothes you want and that sort of thing. And that's true. But what a lot of people also don't see about self-employment and this type of work specifically, whether you're shipping coins or cards or anything, is that one is a 24/7 business. Mm-hmm. I'm working Christmas morning, and that sort of thing. And I was up early today working, and it's a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people with their 9-to-5s that they actually do get the weekends off, and they literally do not have to think about anything work related, maybe until Sunday evening or then Monday morning, when the work week starts again. So, I'd like to, I give you props, Scott, everyone that does this sort of type of work, where I feel like people don't get enough credit for how necessarily difficult it is, and having to deal with that both from financially, because that's like you said, $5,000 that could possibly swing one way or another, and the mental stress that you have to take with you to bed, with you, all throughout the day, with your family, that sort of thing. And it's just nonstop. Now, of course, there's other, work and, attorneys and doctors and stuff that it's always on their mind also, of course. Mm-hmm. But, this type of entrepreneurial way of making money isn't super duper easy. Mm-hmm. Like, there are definitely unique challenges to, making money here in the collectibles category, no matter which portion, even if it's sports memorabilia or, or any of the other cards, stamps, coins, any of it, it all presents a very similar challenges when you're not dealing face to face.
Yeah.
Had you done that transaction with the person, in one in cash and two right in front of you, none of that would have happened.
Right. And that's just not a plausible thing to do all the time, especially now, and I'm a very small fish. Like that $5,000 at that time, it got tied up for that during that case. That was devastating. I mean,
they don't move quick.
Right. And I mean, thankfully that I was still working my 9-to-5 then, so it wasn't like a huge deal. But like if that happened to me now, where I don't have that constant income and I'm playing around, very, very tight budget because of the necessity to buy and sell consistently, that could shut me down. Like that's tough. So, but yeah, it's something that I'm trying to figure out myself is this mentally healthy for me right now? Because I am really enjoying myself. I'm loving that I'm doing this. It's only been 2 months, 2.5 months, right? Full
Yeah.
time. And like I've noticed that like I'm obsessed. Like it doesn't stop.
So what I will say now that this December 19th, so what here at 13 days will be my 10 years.
Hmm.
And I will say that I feel like not only just of course just with time between age 23 to 33, people will change, but with the amount that I've immersed myself in, it's definitely affected, like a lot of the things I do. Because everything now is correlated, time spent is correlated to money.
Hmm.
Whereas probably when you worked your 9 to 5, you worked your 9 to 5, but then after you're done on Friday, you don't have the choice to be like, well, I could go out with my friends or go grab a beer, or I could be working.
Hmm.
You don't have that choice because your hours are done. You're done,
Hmm.
and so you don't have the opportunity cost of either making money or doing this.
Right.
And so I've noticed, and I would give this advice to anybody that's trying to maybe get into like a 100% entrepreneurial, sell online, do their own thing, type of space, would be that time management and like mental health is a huge, huge thing. And I know I 100% struggled with it and still continue to struggle with it, managing time. Because when it comes down to it, it's like, well, I could either go do this or go do that or spend time with family, or if I could just get these couple more sales, and reach out to the couple, take a few more pictures, reach out to a couple other buyers and make this couple of other sales, or in the case of like some of these cards, for example, it'd be like, well, dang, I really want this card. Well, all right, I'll just, sleep for 3 hours and get a lot more work done and that sort of thing to try and make up for what would then be, an expenditure or that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So it does take its toll. And again, there's probably a ton of people out there that'll be like, wait, all you have to do is like decide on something you want and then just work either X amount of hours or make X amount of deals or sales just to like get that. Whereas most people are like, well, I make this much money per week and I always know my paycheck is going to be X. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So it's definitely a struggle and a juggle, between just being able to relax and saying, well, I could be doing this more. I could be, in your case, maybe taking more pictures of cards and putting them on eBay, or getting more cards ready just to make that little bit earlier submission to PSA or Beckett, that sort of thing. Because that in combination with the stress of, people complaining, like right now, there's a handful of people, the combination of COVID with the holiday shipping, it's really stressing out, the postal system.
Hmm.
And it's usually like this every single December, but not when you add COVID to it.
Right.
So I'll have people that will message me all the time saying like, it's supposed to be, shipping. And I'm like, I promise, I got it out the day I told you I was going to get it out. And the tracking shows it's like halfway there and it's on the way. Like, I promise you, it'll get there. But please understand that there's a lot of big, unique factors going into this holiday season that aren't around other, that are completely unique, that aren't there in other holidays
Hmm.
or really anything. I mean, COVID doesn't really compare to anything.
Right.
So, but it's just that mental stress. I wake up in the morning, I check the computer, and it's like it's almost gotten to the point where it's a copy and paste email that I have already prepared for literally all the people that are like, you know what, I know that priority mail is supposed to take 2 to 3 days. We're at day 4. Where is it?
Right. I turned off international sales on eBay once
Oh yeah,
lockdown started.
yeah. When it comes to eBay specifically, global, their global shipping program is really the only way to go.
Yeah.
And as long as you get it to Erlanger, Kentucky,
Hmm.
then like you're fine. And any other course, anything shipping related after that,
Right. There's no
isn't.
responsibility on you, so it goes away.
So
But
that's the way to do it. And that goes back to when you sold your Umbreon. I was interested because you had then mentioned that it's an international buyer
mm-hmm.
and not going through eBay with that sort of thing, which I totally understand. I would never be comfortable shipping anything 40 grand or, any high number value, anything in the five figures overseas. You just never know,
Right.
you know.
And I'd be curious to see if eBay would even pay that out.
I'd be interested too because I don't do too much international shipping. Thankfully, people that want American coins are generally Americans,
Yeah.
So, and they're based here, whereas of course there's Americans everywhere, but generally they're trying to collect and they're collecting here.
Yeah.
So I don't run into that too much, but when I do, it's global shipping for $1,000 here, $1,000 there, and it's
Mm-hmm.
and that goes over fine. And usually, if it does, it's to Canada. We're not going to Italy or
Mm-hmm.
Uzbekistan. Just some like
Way out there. Yeah.
yeah. Not that Italy's way out there, but you have to
Well,
go
it's a
through
whole.
a lot of transfers.
Yeah.
To make it to that point. Whereas if you just go across the border, up to Canada,
Right. It's one postal
the
service to
system
another.
is way
Going to
more fluid.
Italy, it's like 2 or 3 different postal services, right? Even
Yeah,
more.
and like you just never know, especially with any country out there. You never know if the buyer has just this little side deal set up with their postal guy
Mm-hmm.
that just I'll slip you $500. Just don't make me sign for this one.
Yeah.
And whereas if you go through eBay's global shipping program, again, that's all on them. They take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with you as a seller. But if you do it yourself, and you just hand it off to FedEx, and they're just buddy with their FedEx guy on the other end, and all of a sudden you don't have that signature. I mean, I guess if you went through the money wire, like you said, the bank wire,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe not an issue. But any other form, credit card, eBay's own money management system, PayPal, any of it, I'm pretty sure that under most circumstances, the seller would lose under that,
Yeah.
that sort of.
Yeah.
And that what you're going to do? You're going to sue the guy over in a whole nother country, trying,
Yeah. It's a lot.
especially when it's just it would be a nightmare. And given that sometimes, especially with customs and these sort of things, I know Umbreon, for example, Espeon. Gosh, I wish it was Umbreon. Espeon, for example, I bought it from the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And that seller shipped it, and it was supposed to arrive in about 3 days, but it got stuck in customs for about 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, as the buyer, you're just like, okay, like you're still safe. But as the seller, I mean, I probably would have certainly lost some sleep.
Yeah.
When it's supposed to, the FedEx says it's going to arrive in 3 days. It gets stuck in customs. It doesn't move for 5. No updates. No nothing. And that sort of thing. I don't know how I would personally handle that.
Oh yeah. It's
But
that's really tough. I mean,
whereas U.S., you can. It's just a little bit more streamlined. So it's getting into the big investments is really fun and exciting, but there does come a time when you do either move assets around, meaning, so for example, when I bought the Espeon, I was like, well, I think I'm pretty set on how much actual free cash I have that I want to put into the hobby. So if I want new cards, I'm going to have to move around assets, meaning I'll have to sell some cards to generate information or to generate income to buy the next card,
mm-hmm.
such that I'm not just continually inputting, but I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, well, I'll just move some assets around, trade some out for other ones. So, and that's what I did. So that was actually the only Pokemon card. I've actually sold a few now, but like, I don't know, maybe 3 different sales ever. But it was only to then generate, essentially make a trade. Of course, people don't want to physically do the trade,
Mm-hmm.
nor is that, actually safe. So you have to sell it and trade it for money to then trade that money, over for the next
Right.
asset.
So just sticking with that initial, that principal investment,
Yeah. So
keeping it within the family there. That's something that I've been terrible on doing. Like just personally, budget wise, I just been throwing all my money at Pokemon consistently, and I need to
Well,
protect myself a little bit better, I think. But um, yeah, because like one of my guys that I had on earlier, gotta catch 'em all, Dan, really good friend of mine. He started with 5 grand back in the day, and has never,
okay,
never gone outside of that. I mean, maybe on occasion for a huge deal, but he always replaced it right away. But
okay.
started with 5 grand, and he's turned it into, I forget what he valued his collection at. I think it's close to 1 million at this point. So yeah, if you're able to stick to that
If you could
principal
stick
investment and
that,
move it, like
trade up. Yeah, exactly. Like trade up a little bit, plus the market helps you out with its own, increases.
mhm.
That sort of thing. I mean, yeah, you can really do well. Um, but I wouldn't advise anybody to kind of like drop what they have. I think you've got a really good understanding, much better than myself, of the whole market and everything that's going on. And so you feel comfortable, leaving your 9 to 5 to really jump headfirst into this. But I think that's a very, very unique situation.
Mhm.
And I think we've maybe seen some of that with some of the retrace here in well, for example, first edition base set PSA nines have retraced some.
Mhm.
I I don't think people jumped in
I bought
with
eights. I bought eights,
eights.
and they retraced pretty heavily too.
Yeah, I think most everything has but tens.
Hmm.
Tens have kind of settled and stayed, and maybe we'll see. We'll see with this next PWCC with the full 10 block up there,
Hmm.
how some of those numbers do compare to the last one. But I know some of the other ones have retraced the lowers, nines and below, and it's always interesting to speculate on why maybe that is. And one of the reasons why could possibly be, among other things, is that a lot of people bought in when they saw it going up,
Hmm.
and they didn't quit their jobs, but they may have either credit cards or took out money from other savings areas in their accounts and put it in, and a lot of the times I feel like I was a little late to the party, starting to be, with my May 11th
Hmm.
start date. Had I been late 2019 or maybe January, February,
I
I
was late
think,
to the party in 2016.
right. So that's like, I'm like, I mean, you're like front row, but of
But I
course,
have that same feeling of being late.
yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully, what I'm betting on is maybe I won't feel so late to the party, come 2023, 24, maybe when Illustrator, maybe when Scott gets his $2 million price on that, he'll probably want 5 by then, but
Right.
you know what I mean? When some of these cards, maybe Kangaskhan, and maybe he gets to 500,000.
Hmm.
I believe the last one was,
Last two were 150 each.
yeah, right around there. So all those will seem like super deals and steals, in a few years.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, when I came in and joined, I said I've got to use only this, an X amount of money.
How much was it? Can I ask that?
Uh, what I'll say it's like between 200 and 300.
Okay.
So, I mean, to be honest, do I know down to the exact penny? I'd have to go into some of my spreadsheets and really add it up. But it was a lot,
Yeah.
it was a lot. But what I will say though is that was for collectibles and this stuff as a whole. I
Mhm.
have bought some other things that are outside of Pokemon.
Hmm.
There's a few sports cards.
Tom Brady, I think I saw.
Yeah,
I pulled up your
couple,
Instagram here.
couple Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady that are on there.
Great buys.
Yeah, so those have gone up. Now, for example, when I bought that Tom Brady, so okay, this is a little bit of a sad story, but it'll make hopefully people feel well. So that Tom Brady card in a 9 in September of 2015, I bought from PWCC for 1,800, and then about 8 months later, it was worth. I had an offer for 5,400, and I'm like, wow, 18 into 54. One, this is a huge move compared to some of the coin stuff that I do. The coin margins aren't anything like this.
Hmm.
They're reliable, and I've got all the the system set up, and it's just like a moving machine now. But the margins aren't anything like that.
Right.
So and especially from a security standpoint, you don't see stocks move like that either.
Mm-mm.
You don't see a stock price go from 18 to 54.
You're happy with 5%.
Yeah, oh yeah, 5% a year, and not so to make it double, like a 3x doubling in half a year. I'm like, okay, like I'm totally cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
You want this guy wants the card. He's a credible person. Sold him the card.
Mm-hmm.
And then was kind of out of it, and wasn't doing too much between 2015 to 2019. Not too much with the other collectibles. Was just kind of stay in my course with the stuff that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, was getting out of an apartment, buying a house, using disposable income for what I felt like were
smart investments.
Yeah, necessary, like progression forward, like
Mm-hmm.
in life type of steps.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, do I want to buy other things? Yeah, kind of, but like, is it the right thing probably to get out of renting and buy a house? If financially it presents itself, it's probably the right thing to do. And stop paying rent and
Mm-hmm.
start paying what would then be a mortgage, but which is, then you own it essentially. Mm-hmm. So I finally looked at the Tom Brady card in September of 2019, and I absolutely died. It was at $24,000. And I'm like, holy smokes. I just bought it. I bought it 5 years earlier at $1,800, sold it for 54, thought it was a great deal, was like super pumped, happy with myself. And now it's for $24,000. $5,000's a lot, but $24,000's really a lot. So I looked into it a little bit more, and I rebought the card.
How much?
So I got $24,500. So essentially when we saw it there, there's a couple on eBay, kind of made some deals, negotiations. Last one sold for $24,000. The next seller is willing to let it go for not too much more. Essentially the same price as the last sold.
Mm-hmm.
So I went in on that, and now it's worth close to 40, give or take. I'd have to go back and look. It's mostly PWCC that sells that specific card.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too many individuals that sell that card that I've seen. Mm-hmm. But I'm not I'm on Instagram with Pokemon, and I'm pretty. I've interacted with lots of people in the community on Instagram about Pokemon, but I'm not in the same realm with sports cards. Mm. So I don't interact with the same people. So much like Pokemon is on Instagram, well, of course, sports cards are also on Instagram, just like that, with the same type of, community and all the buy posts and sell posts and trading and all sort of that. So I was never a part of that back then. In fact, I only made Instagram. I don't do much with social media at all. Mm-hmm. I think I have a Facebook account that I haven't logged into or posted on for like 4 years.
Yeah,
it's just not my thing. I get enough stress as it is, email, work, and that sort of thing. Like I don't need to know who from high school, that I haven't talked to in 10 years is going out to Starbucks to get their new pumpkin chai latte because it just released. Like, I'm really happy for that person. That's great. But like, it doesn't like enter my brain. Like, I don't need to see it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not super big on social media. So I was really reluctant, to start an Instagram as it was. Cause I'm like, I'm not really into that social media stuff. But I did it because I saw it was after E4, and when I joined E4, it was really a good experience. Mm-hmm. I felt like a lot of people were, one, welcoming, but two, willing to share advice mm-hmm. that I felt like they wouldn't necessarily in other type of collectibles. Like when it comes to coins, for example, there's certain things about coins that I know, but I don't want to share with other competitors because I don't want them to know mm-hmm. and affect the price positively or negatively. And I thought that would be, I was like, it's got to be that same way for all collectibles. Like Yeah, if people are out there interested in buying Masaki's or play promos or other sorts of promos, they're not going to help other people understand about them. They're going to be like, you probably don't want that, because they want it.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like the community as a whole was actually really inviting for someone that really didn't know anything about Pokemon itself, other than what I remembered as a kid, and then just the collectibles macro points that I know just by the 10 years in collectibles, but nothing about this specific collectible. So E4 was very welcoming, and that kind of pushed me when I saw other people's Instagrams. I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to acquire some cards here, and I'd like to post them up too. I'll come back to that Instagram point, but I want to finish up the Tom Brady. So I bought the card then again at 24, and that was my first entrance back into anything other than collectibles, aside from what I had as a kid as Magic, and then my own core business with Coins of Bullion. And it's widely accepted, hopefully. I mean, I think most people feel this way, that he's the best quarterback to have lived out of right now. So with that, and that's kind of like the OG, like first edition base Charizard.
Well,
that's kind of
I beat this story with a dead horse at this point, but I had the 9.5 first edition base set Charizard, sold it in February for $12,500. I actually had the opportunity to buy it back at $24,000. Funny enough, I didn't. Yep. Today it's worth $125, $150.
Yep.
And that's, instead of 5 years, that's 8 months.
Right. And who knows? Maybe in 2 years we'll be having this conversation again, because both of us skipped out on it and it just got to 400.
Right.
5. Because I truly do think that the PSA 10. I think it could become $1 million card. I think it will be definitely some time and change in the market, and we'd have to see some. It'll take time.
There's too many available right now. I think we'll hit.
I think it'll get there, and I think what has to happen is, as the price goes up. So right now, the people that own the card, go all the way from like super rich down to just us regular people. And as the price goes up, the more normalized income people will start to realize, much like Bulbasaur did with his set, is, hey, this is a life-changing amount of money, and it's just time. It's just time. And likely the person then buying that card is one of the very top end type of people that 100,000 here, 100,000 there, no difference.
Right.
Their portfolio makes no difference. So as the people that need the money more, and what I say need loosely, but as they decide that it's the money's more valuable to them than the card, let it go. Then it's going to take more and more money to get it out of the grip of the next person.
Right, because even if someone spent $200,000 on the Charizard, it goes up to $300,000.
Yep.
$100,000 is not enough for them to sell. Doesn't matter to them. They want to see it hit $500,000 before they sell. They want to see it hit $1 million before they sell. Yeah.
And so we'll see here. Like the last one sold for $295, so we'll see if this one can break $300. I sure hope it does. I'd like to see the next Charizard, and it has all the attributes to break the $300. Obviously PSA 10, but thick stamp. The proper
strong example. Yeah, strong
example of the proper, PWCC, so it'll get out to the most of the market that can possibly see it, that sort of thing. It's not a private all Instagram sale or anything like that. So it has all the attributes to make for a record sale. So I really hope, one, for his case, of course, but two, for the market and community, that it does set that pace. Yeah. At that price, along with all the other, all the 16 haulers. I'd like to all see them, set records.
Yeah.
I think he picked out and took his time to pick out some really prime examples, and he didn't just settle. I mean, there's not a thin stamp in there. He
Right.
really knew what he was going after, and picked out good cards. And from what it sounds like, it was a little while ago. When the cards were a little bit more available. Right now, I think most of the time when it comes to a PSA 10 base holo, if there's one available, you take whatever it is. Thin
Right.
stamp,
Right. Yeah,
elite.
I'm very close with E-Ball. I've been in conversation with the whole selling process with him the whole time, and I'll probably have him on after this sells, right? So yeah, I know exactly how much or close to how much he put into it when he put into it, and it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily like life changing for him, but the amount of money like just will provide this new sense of comfort for him for the
Oh
rest
yeah.
of his life,
Financially,
basically.
you know, uh, back to like what we were talking about earlier, when the 5 grand would make a huge difference when it gets tied up one way or another.
Hmm.
But say you had a similar something like this that you could sell, and it goes for 600, 700, whatever the total ends up being for the entire set. But if you had that on the side as a financial security blanket,
Hmm.
a lot of these other life stresses when it comes to this work and that sort of thing, you're still able to breathe through it.
Yeah.
They're like, well, okay, if I really do get scammed and I really do lose this, I'm still okay.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know, so even though, you may not be buying this super duper car or house, or upgrading this or that or the other, even if you just kept it as cash, or, a cash equivalent, like a CD, just sort of that type of thing,
Hmm.
you have, and this is something that, I'm of course working on myself, you have that financial security to be able to still go to bed at night,
Hmm.
and you know what, no matter what happens with this, I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So,
very
so
important. I mean, that's something that the other point of why I sold that Charizard and a lot of other things earlier in the year that would honestly I would be a millionaire today if I kept. I sold it to pay off my car, to pay off my student loans. For whatever reason, I maxed out my Roth IRA for the year, and then
that's, yeah, I still do. That's
and
a
and then I set aside money for a house, which I ended up not buying a house. I used that money to buy more Pokemon, but I did all that, and yeah, I made that conscious decision to sell it all to put myself in that mindset. And honestly, if I hadn't done that, I don't think I would have taken the leap to leave the job that I hated, because I would have still had debt technically, and it would have been stupid for me to leave that income stream and still have to pay a monthly thing. I mean, yeah, I moved out and have to pay rent, but I don't have that car, I don't have the student loans.
right.
Like that's off my mind. So that mental value has been huge. I mean, I'm still struggling getting over the fact that I sold those cards and whatnot, but that's over with. It's whatever. And I'll always we always talk about hindsight and everything, so it's just always going to be there. But yeah, without that, I don't think I would have made that leap to do this. So there's a lot of value outside of the money, the monetary side of things
Yeah,
that.
there's learning.
Hmm.
There's, whether it be there, a lot of people, and this is why I think part of the base nines, eights, all of that possibly went down, was a lot of people bought in, but they couldn't necessarily afford it.
Hmm.
Put it on either on accounts that didn't need to be used, or credit cards, that sort of stuff. And then within the 30 days, they're like, all right, Charizard is going to do this. A 9 Charizard is going to go from here to there, to wherever.
Hmm.
I'm going to make a quick 20 grand. This is going to be amazing. Well, then the debt comes due. And then, all of a sudden 3 or 4 Charizards hit the market. And then that,
And they got to
drive
take whatever they can get to pay that off.
they have to take a price. So if the last one sold, I think one on PWCC even went up to about 60.
Hmm.
Well, then that next seller's like, fine, I'll take 55. And then the next guy's like, oh, geez, he'll take 55. I'll do 51.
Hmm.
They all entered, let's say at 10 or at 20 or 30,000. And they all get to the point where they're like, wait a minute, I just got to get out and get my money back.
Right.
So I think that's partially what's driven down the cost of some of these, non-10
Yeah.
graded cases. Not the whole thing, but I do think some of the flippers got in a little bit over their heads, because generally you're not the flipper. The flipper that bought the PSA 10, well, I mean, they're not a flipper.
Right.
If they had that money to begin with, they're probably in a one different financial situation, and two, they're probably in it for more of the long term.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just looking to flip it over. Whereas you start to get into 10, 20, 30,000, and yeah, a lot of people may say, hey, it's COVID, this sucks. I if I can turn this 30 into a 50 and it looks like it's like super easy to do,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like a win-win. Like the card's not going down, everybody's all excited about it.
Right. Yeah, and like I mean, I'm very well known as a flipper now. Like I'm just accepting it. I still don't think myself as a flipper. I still think myself as a collector, but it's pretty evident that I am. But I never leverage myself. I will never leverage myself. I can't handle that mental stress. So when I do buy a card, I always have some sort of nest egg that allows me to hold on to it for a long enough time. And plus, I have a much deeper knowledge than a lot of these other flippers do that came in to know what to buy. Like that Umbreon, Espeon, like it's a solid card. There's no way that I'm gonna find a buyer. So yeah, that's just standard the standard definition of economics, supply and demand. We saw the supply drive up, and yeah, I guess people needed to pay for those debts, that leverage. So that's the one big thing.
And that's my own type of presumption of possibly what could happen. I think there's a lot of other
Of
factors.
course, yeah.
Everybody's got their own unique situations.
Mm-hmm.
Things come up in families that require money. But what I will say is that to finally finish just the Tom Brady thing is I felt like the Patrick Mahomes, which is the other two cards there, were the up and coming.
Yeah.
And he seems to be playing that way, and he seems to be doing well. But I got that Tom Brady card back, and it was like finally, like I had to pay essentially the top of the market for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything is revolving around then what would then be the next up and coming guy. Yeah. So I took a leap on that, and we'll see if it ends up paying off. The cards are up right now. He twists his ankle tomorrow or pulls a Andrew Luck, gets hurt, can't, kind of does,
Mm-hmm.
willy-nilly around for a few years, then eventually drops out. If that happens, of course, that deal there. But that specific factor is also because, like I said, I got into those cards before Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
But that factor is what then steered me away from really diving into that.
All right, modern sports is scary. It's a huge risk, especially with. It doesn't make sense that a rookie, a sophomore are selling for as much as a legend, right? And
yeah, it makes no sense.
It's weird. So taking. But again, we saw Mike Trout go like crazy. We saw, LeBron's already established himself as a legend. I still don't understand Mike Trout. I get it; his numbers on the field are insane, but where's the ring? So
I'll fully admit openly, baseball is not.
It follows a different path. It's its own thing. So I just don't understand it. I just want my Ken Griffey Juniors, and I'm done. But yeah, it's. Modern sports is a scary thing. I mean, we saw basketball drop 50% or so. Now it's way back up again because, season's coming back around. And you don't know with modern. Like, you buy a rookie card, that Patrick Mahomes, and this could be the top for him. I don't know,
Yeah,
and
you don't. And so at that time, it was like, one of those cards cost me 10, one of them cost me 20.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was like a lot of my friends they do stuff with like Tesla and like penny stocks, and that's what they do with their disposable income.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to then risk this portion of disposable income on this type of asset, which would have been a collectible asset.
You have more control over it. You understand it better.
A little more control over it, but what drove me to not go too far into it was the fact that not only do all those market, conditions apply to both sports cards and any of the other collectible cards.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing sports cards have going against them is the fact that the cards are based on a real life person.
Yeah.
That real life person can, one, make decisions that greatly affect the value of that card, and two, they can get injured.
Yep.
So no Pokemon's getting injured, or Magic card, or coins.
No scandals.
Right. So all of a sudden you take a Ray Rice in the elevator, right? And I mean, instantly.
Yeah.
I don't know if that completely zeroed out his card, but it zeroed out his career. And any value associated with that card, I think, just probably went down with it.
Right.
I wasn't at that time of sports cards or him, so I don't know the exact numbers of what happened. But, so that's part of it too. Is like, I bet on Tom Brady because I really don't think he's going to hit his wife. I mean,
he's just going to kiss his son on the lips.
I mean, if it's socially acceptable, and I guess it personally makes no difference to me.
Yeah.
But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Like, so I had to take a step back from going any further in that direction because I can't put a super significant portion, of a disposable income or an amount that I have set aside for this type of hobby in something where someone else, literally one other person's decision can zero that.
Right.
And so they wouldn't want to either because it will zero out their own career, by doing, that sort of stuff, the Ray Rice, for example. But in football, I feel like we see it all too often, whether it be DUIs or domestic violence, all that sort of stuff can really hinder a player's career and thus the value.
Yeah.
So I went in and I dabbled a little bit into the sports stuff with those cards, but then I was like, you know what, I'm out. And Magic wasn't, although nostalgic, didn't have the correct investable characteristics going forward. Now, if you invested when Rudy did, back in, buying PSA 10 alphas in 2005 for $50, that's a different story.
Right.
But buying in 2020, I didn't think that it had a strong enough upside for that. So then I went to something, not like, it wasn't like third down the list. It was just like, it's like going around in a circle. None of them are better than the other. They all mean something to me. I absolutely love football. Magic is very nostalgic, and Pokemon is also quite nostalgic, just in a period of time after Magic was, given my age. So when I landed on that, it met all the factors. And so combination of those characteristics, entering into the hobby, and the barrier to entry was low from an informational standpoint. Everybody that I talked to, welcoming, willing to share, even if I made myself have some silly name on E4. I don't even like bugs.
Well, that's one of the guys in the game. So BugCatcher.
Exactly. So when I did my name on E4, I saw someone, like, to be honest, the first person that I saw have a similar name that I remembered was, I believe it's Cool Trainer Ryan.
Cool Trainer Ryan. Yeah, I had him on the podcast a little bit ago.
100%.
Yeah.
So he had Cool Trainer, and I'm like, yeah, like I remember, like you'd run into, in the Game Boy game, you'd run into all the. So I brought up the list on Wikipedia, or Bulbapedia maybe, and of all the names of the different types of trainers you could run into, and I was really only interested in like red, blue, yellow,
right?
Because I grew up with. I don't know too much about like black, white, all that sort of stuff. Doesn't really resonate with me. So I started going through the list, and I'm like, well, Swimmer Dave, that kind of that doesn't really work. Or
Mad Scientist or something. Was that one of them?
Yeah, it didn't quite necessarily.
Climber Dave.
Climber Dave, 100%. It didn't quite fit me or just kind of roll off the tongue properly.
Yeah.
And like, to be 100% honest, and I know most people don't even do this, I don't even go by Dave. In fact, I hate Dave. Like when people actually call me Dave, I feel like that's like an old term, you know. So here in real life and all that kind of stuff, I go by David.
Okay.
And it's generally, and of course I know I don't expect anyone to know that, especially when I brands myself as Dave. But Dave works much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Well, I'm going to be calling you Dave, so
it's fine. Everyone in the hobby to probably go with that,
yeah.
just because that's how I branded
Right.
it.
Right.
But what, when I brought this up here at home and to my family and stuff, they're like, why Dave? You hate Dave. It works better, but you're right. I do actually dislike Dave.
Okay.
Maybe when I'm 50, maybe then I'll go by Dave. But
right.
David until then, and so
I'll try to remember to call you David. I mean,
I
haven't been John since like I don't know 4th grade, so it turned into Stibbs, and then now I'm Radar. I'll just probably never be John again. But
how did you come across Radar?
So I'm a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, like more so than Pokemon. And when I started my account, I was into both, and I'm heavily into Dragon Ball Z. Like there's a ton of boxes back here, but there's the Dragon Ball Radar. So I just put together PokemonRadar, and I was like, oh, that's perfect for like finding stuff. I'm gonna be that guy, and I kind of fell into it, and it's worked out pretty well. So, and then I got this sweet logo. I'm still confidently saying it's the #1 logo in all of Pokemon, even Pokemon itself. But
I think,
yeah. So that's how my name came to be, and it's just stuck to Radar now. Saying Pokemon's too long, so that's how it goes.
Yeah. I think when it comes down to a lot of this kind of stuff, we all kind of get into it. Maybe it's kind of by happenstance, like. I think Pokemon Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
You probably didn't know at the time when he first made that name that it was Pokemon Revolution was going to get shortened.
Right.
And he'd be he's not Nick, he's PokeRev.
Right.
That sort of thing. So I think it all just kind of, but it's all for fun.
Mm-hmm. I just recorded with Nick last night, and then Cool Trainer Ryan was one of the original people that I found on Instagram, and dude, he's a character. He's one of my favorite people. That was like a 3-hour podcast if you ever have time to listen to that. But his collection is insane too. So he's really cool.
I don't think I have ever communicated, but if I do give anyone credit for whatever credit's worth, of an inspiration to where I came up with the name, it would have been from Cool Trainer Ryan from Pokemon. Because I watched him do the box openings.
Yeah.
And I believe Cool Trainer Ryan is one of his mods. And he'd shout him out or do stuff there with him.
Yeah.
And that's where
that's awesome. Came from. Now, it's funny connecting these pieces. Because like
Jim. A lot of people, like that new Scyther card or that new, and I'm like,
cool, man.
Like, I mean, it's not that I don't like them. I just don't, they're just like any other.
Right.
Of
course.
They're not additionally special about them is all. But it all came together and it works out and it's all for fun. So.
Yeah. Well, you definitely came to the right place to get started, both from a collection and interest standpoint, but also from an investment standpoint, like you said, because E4 is so helpful, so informational. That's not even a word, but I just made it a word. And yeah, hopefully that continues. I know it's getting a lot even more competitive now. It's always been competitive to get those trophy cards. I mean, even like yesterday, someone sent me over a Gold Star Espeon that's for sale. So I'm hopefully picking that up. We'll see in the next couple of days.
You mean well play?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a raw one for sale. So, huh?
You found one that's for sale?
Yeah. So
okay.
sent the money. Well, I'm splitting it with a friend, so it'll probably be another flip. But maybe I'll convince them to let me take the whole thing and maybe keep it. But I'd feel bad if I ended up selling it, so I might just keep it as a flip. Just to
reach out to because I know he was going after the one on eBay.
Oh, this is out in Japan, so.
Okay.
You said Quichancy?
Quichancy was going after one 2 days ago.
Yeah. He actually was the one that sent me the link. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So you guys.
Yeah. So I think we'll be okay there, but I don't know. You never know who's going after those cards, and it's tricky with Japan. And
Well, that's part because they're so scarce and rare when they come up
mm-hmm.
that I'm fine with sharing that I'm looking for Umbreon and the fan club Magic card,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly because a lot like if I share it, those are high enough price cards that it's not like all of a sudden a bunch of people like, wow, like maybe I should look into them.
Right.
They're
You're weighing that benefit, that pro and con with it, because is it more helpful to get it out there for people to help you find it
yep.
versus that potential price spike? But I think like in this
Me,
case,
I felt it was better to try and do as much legwork as I could
mm-hmm.
without getting it out there.
Yeah.
Especially some of the like Blaine's Moltres, for example, as the set card
mm-hmm.
there in Heroes, right? That you opened
yep.
just last night.
Last night, yeah.
Last night, yeah. So and who got it? Jim Mint.
Gem Mint got it, yeah.
Yeah, good job. So that sort of card in a 10, obviously very hard to get. But I felt like at the time when I was looking for my copy that it wasn't worth putting out the fact that I was looking for it, right. And that I just had to either search around, start finding Instagram accounts that had it and reaching out to them saying, hey, is this for sale? And that sort of thing. Because that was a card that I felt if I brought too much attention to,
it would hurt you more than
yeah. Other people, either if they had it, they'd be like, oh, wow, like people are really looking for this now.
Right.
Like, right. Or other people that have it in their like radar may prioritize it higher because they're mm-hmm. like, wait, this card's kind of hard to get, but so are these other cards I'm looking for. But now I see competition for this one card. I better get it before like it really gets hard to get.
Yeah, and there was a clear correlation with that type of aspect with Logan Paul, because what he was buying, people were selling, and or the people buying for him technically made it very public of their offers and what they wanted to get it for, and that just kind of inorganically raised the price. And if things hadn't blown up further than they would have from that, Logan would have lost out on a lot of money because things dipped right after that. But because of how he handled that, his little stint of buying, he was able to get it to a price point that still made sense even when it fell. But yeah, that was part of the inorganic growth, was honestly Logan Paul looking for specific cards, putting that out on the market, and people offering these crazy prices for them. So you're playing it right, I think.
Following it, kind of like, whether it be you or Scott, when you guys, like, say when you were interested in selling your Umbreon, for you to sell the Umbreon versus if I were to try to sell the Umbreon, I think it, just given now your status and your fault and all that, it would have been much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Logan Paul takes that even to a much higher extent. Not that he even has the following within Pokemon, but because he had just such a mass following that even if a small percent of those handful of millions of people that follow him are interested in Pokemon, it's still a large number.
Right, and with his specific focus on set cards, it made it easy for that to happen because there's so many out there and everyone had them available for sale or ready for sale.
What I do think will be interesting is what happens, with the dumb money cards.
Yes.
And the whole shenanigans all around that, and how, now that the packs are like out of view and potential buyers are like, we don't know what's happening with them. Those guys are saying, oh, we're going to get them all graded and then like revisit it in a year. I'm actually interested to see how the market reacts
mm-hmm.
to that specific set, given everything that went on around on the front end, and then now that generally when people open packs, just like you open the box right there in front of everybody and you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is now a $375,000 box. Who knows where the packs are, mm-hmm. what's happening, or being switched out, if they're not, if they're being weighed, if they're not, like nobody knows.
Right. Yeah. They put themselves under this umbrella of charity. So I think they're safe in that aspect. And if they do follow through with that, which I believe they are, I've been talking to the people involved with what they're planning on doing. I can't say anything about it, but it sounds like things are going to be done legitimately and correctly. But yeah, there is that that conversation that can't be avoided on what's going on there, because there was a lot of miscommunication on their end when they started with that thing, because they don't know what they're doing with Pokemon. It's clear they don't
Yeah,
understand it. They're just
looked
throwing
like
money.
guys were like completely not part of it. I don't think
Right.
Jordan, right, even said a word for like two podcasts. It felt like he was just there watching all
Yeah.
of the stuff happen. And it was Chris mostly,
Hmm.
I
And
think. And
they,
so I guess I'm not going to say if it's like a positive or a negative.
yeah,
It'll
it's
just be very interesting to see
hmm
what happens with those cards
exactly.
and when the market is willing to pay, 10, 20, whatever the kind of the going rate is at the time
Hmm.
for first edition base packs, or if all of this stuff that happens is I don't think it's gonna impact it, in my opinion, positively. I don't think people are gonna want to overpay for, this whole like
Right.
a pack of this situation per se.
Right.
So it'll either go for market or go under
Hmm.
market. And I just think it'll be interesting to see. And so it sounds like, though, it's good to hear that if they plan to keep, the initial uh, plan and promise of donating, and it's all for donation
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. And so that's great. And whichever, I don't know if they name the charity or not,
Hmm.
but whichever charity it goes to, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm just very interested from a investing market point of view
Yeah.
on those specific now. Um, I'm not going to tainted as like a negative word, but they're different. Those packs
Hmm.
are now different
Yeah.
than
That's a
than
good point.
any packs that are kind of still available, and of
Hmm.
course any packs that are still in a sealed first edition base box
Yeah.
that are to get opened in a more normalized style, like you do or PokeRadar does, that sort of thing.
Yeah, because yeah, they did mention like they were going to grade all the packs, but I think that was just a miscommunication. I don't think they're going to grade the packs. So I am curious
I
to
think
see what
there's
does.
a lot of information. Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, that is interesting to see what happens, because it does have a little bit of an asterisk on that box. So when it does come up available for sale for that charity or whatever, I'm curious to see
right.
what really does happen. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, but yeah, wow, dude, we're coming up on almost 2 hours here. Uh,
Yeah, I think
we flew through this. That was great. I
I know a lot
really,
of stuff.
really,
So one, I want to thank you for reaching out. I will admittedly say that I wasn't a tad bit nervous, but I wasn't sure how much I could actually contribute, being as new to the market and the community as I am. So I want to thank you, one, for making this a very free flowing discussion. And I think we definitely hit a lot of very interesting points, whether it be, like work life balance or just lots of stuff that not only stems from the just Pokemon,
hmm
but just from the style of life. You
yeah,
know, a young a young male that's trying to break the mold and not do the 9 to 5 and kind of make their way in a really unforgiving world, especially when we talk about all these scams,
hmm
that sort of thing, and just try and make something of themselves.
yeah.
So I think they share a lot of commonalities there, and we had a great
Well,
conversation.
thank you for the kind words, and I do appreciate your time. I am still selfishly using this platform to pick others' brains, because I know you're quite successful outside of Pokemon, and thank you for the advice on how moving forward with mental health and time management with this stuff, because I am personally struggling with it right now. So that was something for me, more so than the people listening. So thank you.
I mean, for what it's worth, I don't know. Especially, maybe the viewers, or when you go back and do your editing, you'll see me occasionally look over because I have my emails and eBay open
Hmm.
and that sort of thing. And this what comes back down to like the time management is I can't help myself but like check.
Yeah, I was doing the same thing. My phone's right over here, so it's
So
yeah,
I can't self. There's a question right now from somebody,
yeah.
and so I can't look it up why we do all this,
Hmm.
but like, is it itching in my mind to like what are they talking about? They're asking about shipping, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So I would definitely suggest and be completely open, whether you or anybody that has questions, or thoughts about self-employment, working from home, time management, money management, the opportunity cost of doing this activity versus continually working and just making more money, and that sort of thing. I'm very open to have that discussion with anybody. And in fact, I'd encourage it because I also think it would help me discuss a little bit more of maybe also what I'm going through, and kind of vice versa. Of course, I talk about, this kind of different lifestyle and job with my family, but they're also they're not living it, like some of us are, and they don't completely understand, why sometimes I'll stay up, excuse me, from midnight to 4 a.m. because nobody's messaging then. And I can actually feel like I'm relaxing, of course, eBay's open and there's still that sort of stuff, or a lot of my dealers and that sort of stuff are on the East Coast. So it's even later for them. But I find that I don't get the stress from work at those hours. And then that leads to an abnormal schedule, because if you go to sleep at 4, you're not getting up at, 7 or 8
right.
morning, generally, usually. So there's just a lot of, interesting aspects to this type of work, for both, trying to, because we all got to take a break, our mind has to take a break to stay healthy. So I'd be completely open to any of your viewers or yourself or anyone in the Pokemon community that has that type of struggle or is interested in maybe how I've, after 10 years, found a balance, a rough balance. Of course, not everything's perfect, but that sort of thing between all of those type of things. So, but, because when it comes to Pokemon, I'm not the expert, I would definitely divert any questions towards, you guys, you, Scott, and some of the others in the community. But when it comes to either eBay questions or questions regarding, entrepreneurship and that sort of thing, I'd be happy to help or work with anybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your openness with the discussion here today, and hopping on and giving me your time. Make sure you guys all follow BugCatcherDave for his amazing collection on Instagram here. Beautiful pictures, by the way.
I do pride in my photography. That's something that I did a lot of in high school and stuff, with photography and photo classes and stuff like that. And I've actually learned a lot of it because a lot of the coin pictures I have to take. I have a whole setup down in my work area to take very high res close up pictures. So I knew that if I lived it, really high quality close up pictures through cases, because that makes a big difference, right? When you're taking the picture through a case, whether it be a coin, the PCGS coin case or the PSA card case, the glare presents a big challenge.
Yeah.
So I felt like that I needed to, if I was going to go get into Instagram and actually get into social media, which I was unsure of, but if I'm going to do it, I don't want to just kind of throw a card on a table and take a picture of it. I want to, it's because I know how not to. And I've reached out to a couple of people that are interested in using that Lightbox system. And I've reached out, or they've commented, hey, here's my picture, how can I do it better? And I've reached out to a few people and helped them with the settings and that sort of thing to really help bring the card out, and kind of get rid of shadows and kind of weird stuff that can happen with a Lightbox. But I appreciate that. I take a lot of time. In fact, I even had almost 50 posts uploaded on Instagram, because they were taken on a table. And I started all over again. And then with Pokemon, I've left the Magic are fine in a binder. But I'm like, you know what? I just know I can do better. And I moved every single post and started all over, and I'm happy with that. So
I might have to get those specs from you, because my Instagram is pretty.
Lightbox.
All right, awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you for your time today. Have a great time, or great rest of your week coming up here, and I'm sure I'll see you on the Discord. So
You on the forums, and I'll see you on.
perfect. All right, thank you guys. Have a good one.